Do you feel like hiring help is cheating?
Absolutely not.
No.
I was a child care professional. Newborns were my business. That's what I did. I created the education that people who do this work take. I still had professional help in my home. So absolutely not. It is not cheating. We all need help to do this life. No matter what aspect of it, we need help to do life together. We were never, as human beings, meant to do life alone. We are designed to be a community, and sometimes we need to hire that help in order to provide the resources that are not available to us for whatever reason. It is never cheating. Frankly, it's better.
If you're an intended parent, you pour years into preparing for a baby. The matches, the contracts, the doctor's appointments, every detail gets covered. But almost no one prepares you for the moment that baby finally comes home. The finish line you battled for turns out to be just the start of an entirely new journey. Families built through surrogacy often miss that natural 9-month ramp, that gradual way the body and the world eases them into parenthood. Instead, everything lands at once. That joy runs deep, and so does this disorientation that can follow. The unexpected emotional drop, the grief no one mentions, the realization that no one equipped you for the next chapter of becoming a parent. For more than 35 years, Tonya Sakowicz and her team at Newborn Care Solutions Agency stepped into hundreds of homes during those first intense weeks, witnessing it all across every kind of family, especially those going through surrogacy journeys. They see the patterns most families only discover the hard way. In this conversation, we dive into practical steps that you can take to build the support and community every modern family actually needs. Eyes wide open, let's get into it. Tonya Sakowicz and the team, thank you for being a frond of the family.
We're excited to be here. I am Tonya Sakowicz. I am the owner and co-founder of Newborn Care Solutions, our education company, and also the Newborn Care Solutions Placement Agency, where we actually not only educate, but help families find the appropriate caregiver for their family. I have been working in the in-home childcare industry for 40 years at this point in my life as a nanny, as a newborn care specialist, and as an educator. And as you said, I've worked with families at every step of the journey and families through surrogacy. I've worked with singletons, multiples. I've worked with sextuplets. We've seen it all. And we love working with families and supporting them, not just on the journey of parenthood, but adapting to life with a baby and helping them learn all the things that make this such an amazing time, but it can be overwhelming. And we like to make it a little less overwhelming and a whole lot more fun.
Awesome. Maryann, how about you? How did you get started?
I have been in this industry for 28 years. I am a trained newborn care specialist, postpartum doula, and lactation educator. I also have experience as a professional nanny and a preschool teacher. So it's been 28 long years, and I love what I do. I love making matches with the families. I have worked with twins. I've worked with singletons. I've even worked with quintuplets. So I've gotten to see lots of wonderful families. I love what I do.
Awesome. And Brigit, tell us about you.
Hi, I'm the Director of Agency Operations at the Newborn Care Solutions Agency. I originally started out being a mother's helper for triplets back when I was 12 years old, and that sparked my love for newborns and being able to work with them. And so when I hit the catch-22 of not being able to use my university degree, I fell back on my love for newborns and was able to work and become a newborn care specialist, postpartum doula, birth doula, and now also a Lamaze educator, as well as a certified lactation counselor. And so when I then had my own children, I switched over from working in home, which I did for about a dozen years, to now working in the agency side of things and being able to connect families to find their perfect professional to come help support them and make this journey and this transition to bringing home a newborn as smooth as possible.
Wow, all sides of the spectrum. Tonya, you came into our world through men having babies in that community. I'm curious, what drew you to families built through surrogacy and donation and adoption? And how is that first week different for those homes?
It was actually Maryann who found men having babies. And she came to us and she said, Tonya, what do you guys think about me going to this conference? Each of us individually has worked with families through their surrogacy journeys and bringing home that baby. So we've experienced the things that are a little bit different sometimes for some of those families. But honestly, it wasn't until we got involved with men having babies that I really thought about it more from the parent perspective. We really believe as a company in supporting people where they're at and the things that they're doing, even the people that work with us. And Maryann brought the idea. We sent her to the first conference and she called me at the end of the first day and she's like, we have to be part of this. We have to be there. And because we've all worked with families that have been created through surrogacy, we understood some of the things, but this was really an eye-opener for me. And now we're deeply involved with what they're doing, not only with supporting the organization itself, but from the educational side, we're now creating resources for our caregivers to help them support families in this circumstance better. And I now realize how much I didn't know the first time I ever worked with a family. And we've talked about that as a team, the things that we want to make sure that any caregiver we place in a family understands exactly what they're walking into, because these are sometimes families who don't experience the lead up to the baby coming home in the same. They're beautiful families, but they're created a little bit differently. And understanding that it is a different experience for these families, I think is huge. And we love that we get to be a part of it.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I have so many friends that are in all sorts of spots across the US, and they vary in their aptitude. Those who are parents, they vary in how much knowledge they had beforehand. And many of us like us who may be same-sex couples, we had no idea what we were doing before we even became parents. But here's our theory. I just feel like intended parents spend years preparing to have a baby, but almost no time preparing to become parents, especially if you're in the throes of surrogacy. Sometimes that nuance gets lost. You're in the room when those two things collide. Is that real? What does it look like to you when you first meet a new group of parents?
That's 100% real. But I think also sometimes we see that a little bit even with heterosexual couples who have experienced a quote unquote standard. I say standard because I don't like normal, but a standard. We got to parenthood through what we would view as the traditional way, right? They sometimes aren't prepared either. A lot of times they're just creating a birth plan, but they never think about the after the baby plan. And yet I do feel it is different for families that are created through surrogacy. A lot of it is because they're so focused, but I find that a lot of times they're like, wait, is this really real? Are we finally here? I also find that a lot of times when we are dealing with a lot of these families, they're both professionals. They're both used to being really good at what they do. If they're partnered, right? They're used to being really good at what they do. They're president of a bank or they're head of marketing or they're the head of neurosurgery somewhere. And man, there is nothing like a 6-pound baby to bring a grown, competent adult human to their knees faster. And we see that a lot. My experience, at least, has been is that families created through surrogacy sometimes experience that a little harder. And they weren't expecting that, not because they aren't bright and intelligent and thrilled to death to be parents, but because they just didn't have the space to think about it or nobody to say, have you thought about X?
Especially because your blinders are on from when I was in the process of trying to have the baby through surrogacy. It was like we could see nothing else. Brigit, what was your experience? What's your take on meeting families who are newfound parents for the first time?
When you have the gestational carrier as part of the family unit where the baby is going to stay, they do have that little bit more time to adjust to, hey, baby's about to be here. We can feel baby. We can see baby. We can hear baby a bit more. When you've got that gestational surrogate and then all of a sudden they gave you that baby and they send you home, everybody gets a little bit of like, okay, now what? And we've got this baby. And that's where being the professionals in the room and being able to be these newborn care specialists, postpartum doulas and things has been so wonderful for all of us over the years, and why we continue to connect other professionals with families, because we know that they say, yes, okay, at the end of the day, no baby and no parent comes with a handbook, but you're still a parent and this is still a baby. So there are a few things that are going to be the same, and there are a few strategies that we can bring to you and help you with to make sure that this new normal, this new life that you're going to create as a family is one that you can enjoy as best as you can and one that you can move through as smoothly as possible as well.
For the parents' point of view, I think it's really tough sometimes for professionals to slow down. I think that it can be really hard when two really busy people are like, oh, wait, wow, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this baby. And now we're here. And now we don't have to go to work for a little bit. We have to slow down, time stands still for a little bit, and they love it, but it's a transition for them, and they like it, but it's just different. We come in and as a newborn care specialist or postpartum doula that they find through our agency, we match with them and really try to find someone who can blend in well with that family, no matter what their personality is. So I think that that's really important there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I remember the first weeks after we came home with our son, it was not only life altering, but like it screwed with our minds because we were moving a mile a minute, quite literally. We live in California. Our surrogate, Sam, was in Minnesota. We were jumping across state lines. And then all of a sudden, it was like we come to a grinding halt when we got home. And I'm curious, Maryann, on your point, like when you go into someone's home and you see maybe two professionals or two individuals that are really thorough, but now they've had this life change with the baby. What is it that you look for in their home that you want to call out right from the get-go and think more thoughtfully about?
When I've been working in a home, I really try to find where the need is, even when the parent doesn't tell me. A really strong or a good postpartum doula, newborn care specialist really tries to read the room, know where they're needed, know where they're not, tries to see where they can blend in. And when it's time to kind of step back and let the parent be a parent and just say, hey, this is the time for the parent to want to sit with the baby. Or maybe there's some dishes in the sink. Maybe there's a load of laundry, just helping them get through that. Sometimes you just need to look around and see where the need is. Keeping someone fed just so they can spend some time with their brand new baby on the couch, but really just trying to look around and seeing what needs to happen in the home.
Yeah, those are all very resonant points. I just remember coming into a house and it felt like a carnival ride. Getting the space to breathe and having people around us for support. I mean, that's so necessary. Tonya, you mentioned the difference a little bit between traditional versus non-traditional ways of becoming a parent. Let's explore that a little bit more. What do you think the nuances or the differences are with, let's say, same-sex couples who become parents the traditional way versus others that may become parents either through surrogacy or folks like gay men who can't do it naturally? What are the differences that you see?
A lot of times, one of the parents is going through this physically, right? They're feeling it. They're experiencing it. There is that opportunity for the hands-on. So like in your case where you mentioned you're in California and your surrogacy's in Minnesota, look, you can hop on a Zoom, but there's no, I felt the baby move, touch the baby. You don't get to experience that. And so sometimes I have worked with families where it almost doesn't feel real to them. And all of a sudden it's very real because now you have a hungry, tired, wet, screaming baby in front of you that you have to deal with and you're not sure what you're doing. Now, look, most parents don't have any idea what they're doing. Even as a professional, when I had my son, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing and I was completely incompetent. And suddenly I was just like every other parent out there. But I find that my experience has been, and I realize everybody's experience is different. Every family is different. But my experience has been that the families that I've worked with that were created through surrogacy, especially where there was distance, really, it's more of a shock versus they've had a little more time to build up to it. Emotionally, some families connect really well. Some families don't. It takes them a little bit longer to connect emotionally. But I also know that can happen in a very traditionally created family. That happened to me when my son was born. It took me a few days to say, wait, this one I don't give back. This one I don't give to someone else. Wait, I actually get to love this child in a different way than I ever would a client's child. For me, at least that helped me relate a little bit better to what surrogate parents sometimes are experiencing.
I can tell you firsthand, my kids are still kicking my ass every single day. And just when I think, okay, I've kind of got this. No, hell no. I still have no idea what I'm doing. But hopefully I'm faking it well enough. But I agree with you. I think there is that psychological preparation that has nothing to do with the physical preparation that some traditional couples go through. But at least that psychological preparation is something that I didn't think of until I was already in it. What happens to the parents? You started to talk about that, but tell me more. What do you see happen unfold? How do the families that you work with manage through that psychological preparation?
That's part of our job, is to be aware of what's going on, potentially gently bring it up. We do need to be very intentional and very careful. You don't just walk in and go, you really need to get your act together. We don't talk to parents that way, but we can see what is sometimes happening. And sometimes it's bringing it up. Sometimes it's a little more subtle. Sometimes it's hey, come join me while I swaddle the baby over here. Because I noticed earlier you were doing a really great job of swaddling, and love for you to do it again. And I might have a tip or two, right? So to be very intentional about getting you involved, but also respectful of that fear. Because a lot of times that's where it's based, is fear. I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to screw this up. And to draw you in a very intentional sort of way. If it is much, much bigger than that, that might be having a conversation with your partner. And that is something a good newborn care specialist will intentionally find out ahead of time. If there is something that I need to address, is it okay for me to go to your partner? If not, who is your safe person that I can talk to in order to address that? Because we have seen lots of families in lots of different situations, and we oftentimes recognize much sooner than you do that something might need discussion. But a lot of our job is to simply just come alongside and gently support you as you are learning how to do this. And just like when you're dealing with a toddler, you point out what's being done right. Parents need that reassurance and that building up in the very same way that children do, in the very same way that, frankly, all of us do in all of life. And people generally respond a whole lot better if you point out what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong. We oftentimes just see it a little sooner. And look, that's a universal across any family, no matter how they're made.
It sounds very empathetic in that approach. I think that's important.
I see a lot of new families get really, really nervous about bathing their baby for the first time. They think, oh my gosh, this baby is so tiny and they're wiggly and they're wet and I'm going to do something wrong. So they're always like, I need you here to show me what to do. It is scary for a brand new parent to be near water with a baby because obviously they hear scary stories and we don't want them to be scared. We want them to enjoy this. And what I always have told parents is your baby is going to enjoy their bath. I promise you. Their baby lived in water for 9 months. Your baby is going to remember that they love the water. It is a little frightening at the beginning, but I think that is something that I have seen initially. And I have just really tried to make them feel comfortable and confident, go slow, try to include them into each step, not try to make it overwhelming. Nothing has to be perfect. Start from the head, move down the body. But yeah, that can be a little overwhelming at the beginning, but it doesn't have to be. And we try to be there and give them some tips and some tricks on that part. I think that just kind of stands out to me a little bit in my experience, though.
I thought it was fun to use the spaghetti arm over the stove and bathe my kids in the kitchen sink. Lesson learned, don't do that.
One of the most important things that Tonya, Maryann, and I have touched on, at the end of the day, we are there when it's a good newborn care professional, when it's a good new postpartum doula. We're going to see what you need before you see it. And we're there also not just for that practical side of, hey, here's how you bathe the baby. Hey, here, let me give you a couple tips and tricks for swaddling this baby, but also on that emotional side. So that at the end of the day, when we're done with our job, we've worked ourselves out of a job because you have so much confidence in your role as a parent now, in your role that with your newborn, that we can walk away and you're like, I've got that.
It's definitely something that is so important. Those first few days and those first few months, they're not just the first moments for the baby. As you said, it's for the whole family. And it really helps shape that nuclear culture for that family. So the more positive first steps they can take, the better it is in the long run. Which kind of leads me into a different point, and that's about the culture around family building today. Sharing a bit of a personal story, for better or for worse, when I first had my son, I worked for a company that at the time said my leave was not going to be as long as I'd ideally have needed it to be because I wasn't the birthing parent. And it made me think about other men who go through surrogacy and are not birthing parents, but they are a parent. I'm curious to get your take. What's missing for the parents in today's culture that maybe hasn't really been built yet, either in a policy sense or in a general parent culture, that would support folks that are going through surrogacy or other unique and non-traditional ways to build their family?
Having worked in Europe, I really struggle with the rules and regulations around parental leave and bonding time that is given to either the birthing parent or the non-birthing parent in a traditional or non-traditional relationship. And I wish I could do more in this country to be able to expand upon that and help people in the workforce at the top and in the government at the top who are making these rules understand the importance of that first 6 to 8 weeks for every single member of that nuclear family and the family that they're bringing home that newborn to.
I've also lived in Europe and have a similar perspective. The country that I lived in had a year-long maternity leave, and both parents could take up to a year. And seeing, I guess, what I would say the long-term implications, obviously there's way more to it than just that first year because social structures are entirely different in Europe than they are in the United States. But just that support and that idea, that concept that that's an important part of the family. Whereas realistically in the US, we don't treat that as an important thing. There are far too many people, whether they've given birth or not, who are having to go back to work in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I've worked with a client who was working in the hospital in labor and then had to take a meeting 24 hours after giving birth to twins. We just live in a culture that unfortunately does not value children and new families in a way that I would love to see. So in my ideal world, it would be very different than it is now. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Unfortunately, I just don't think on a broad scale, we're even anywhere close to making the changes that I would ideally love to see.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of have to play within the reality that we're in. And with that being the reality, what would you tell someone who's in that position? Let's say you're working with somebody who does have a short leave or just may not have that time. Is there a way to build that ramp time ahead? And if so, how do you get somebody in the frame of mind of parenthood earlier on so that they can make the most of whatever leave they have?
I tell parents when I work with them, let's look at anywhere in your life that we can offload any other responsibility we possibly can. Is that hire a chef, hire a food delivery service? Is that hire a housekeeper? Is that hire a laundress? Is that taking advantage of family resources if they're legitimate? Because the I want to help is very different than I'm going to come in and do laundry. Because what people often, I want to help is let me hold the baby while you wait on me, which is not what we want for our new families, right? But let's look at everywhere we can offload every other possible responsibility in any way that we can do it legitimately so that when you bring home your baby, you can spend what time that you do have focused solely on your baby and your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your baby, and how both of you are now growing and bonding and connecting with that family. And when you can offload all those other responsibilities, then you're freed up to focus on those things. But let's not just offload them for the first, say you only have 2 weeks, not for just the first 2 weeks. Let's see if there's a way to offload that for 6 months so that even when you go back to work, because you have to, or you feel you have to, that what little other time you do have is 100% focused on just your relationship with your baby and your growing family.
It's so necessary. And to your point, I wish things would be different on a broad scale, but it's great to hear that you're at least thinking through and putting together tools.
We've turned it into a whole family activity now. What we recommend is have you and your partner, the family unit, sit down together and you each have a piece of paper. And the idea is you write down on your piece of paper everything you're responsible for, and your partner write down everything on their piece of paper that they're responsible for. And in a traditional family, you're going to take that birthing woman's piece of paper and you're going to hand it off to the partner and say, hey, what in this do you want to take care of? Or what in this do you not want to take care of? And so then where do we need to bring in help to take care of it? And in families where you've got two working dads and you've come home and you've got this newborn, we would say both of you take a look at each other's pieces of paper. Where are we going to be able to take time off from work? How long are we going to get? Are we going to have 2 weeks at the same time? Are you going to take 2 weeks and then I'm going to take 2 weeks? And during those time periods, I mean, hopefully 6 to 8 weeks you can get, but the realism behind some of these work HR things is 2 weeks, right? So who is going to then take care of those things? Am I going to take on my partner's role while he is doing the newborn care at home and off of work, and vice versa? Or like Tonya said, where can we bring in that support? Where can we take those things off our plate for as long as we possibly can so that both of us can spend that time bonding with our new baby, getting to know our new baby and our new relationship as a family unit too, so that by the end of it, you feel confident in all of that. You feel supported in all of that, and just taking some of those practical things out of the way. That's the activity. And the answer for every family is going to be different.
I think that's really something that's necessary even without kids. Understanding the frame of mind that your partner is in is always a good baseline.
I would just say it's really hard, again, for people to slow down. Like I was mentioning before, when you're a busy executive and you have to slow down and kind of smell the roses, it is hard for people to do that. The other thing that comes to mind is when people say, oh, I want to help you. Oftentimes they want to help you during the daytime. If you have a friend or family, they don't always want to help you overnight time. And that's when we get calls. They're like, I'm exhausted. I need to find someone to help me because I'm so tired overnight. Because oftentimes if you do get support or if someone offers to give you an extra hand, they want to help you during the day. They don't often want to show up at 2:00 in the morning. So we're often getting a call that says, I'm so tired. The baby does not sleep. If they do have support, oftentimes it may be during the daytime.
It's interesting because when I was going through this with my husband and thinking through like what are our daily responsibilities, how should we divide up the work, when we laid it out, it was crazy just to see all of our responsibilities that we had for our lives, whether that's caring for other family members or maintaining our house and household and even our social community and our family. That had to sit beside our duties and responsibilities for our children. And one of the things that hit me, and this is something I didn't expect, was I don't know what other word to use other than grief. It was this different feeling of saying goodbye to my former self without kids, while also embracing all the joy that comes with parenthood, but some of the realities too, in that we were both exhausted. I was tired, and going out at night used to be a fun activity, but then getting up in the middle of the night to change a diaper definitely didn't match my pre-kids experiences. Maryann, have you ever had a parent apologize to you for feeling tired or feeling exhausted? Do you feel like there's that shared sense of grief from new parents?
Absolutely. It's a total different way of life. They've been working 80 hours a week and now they're home all the time and they're not able to go and do whatever they please, and their baby's crying and they're like, wait, what? I got it. I'm slowing down. And then you're showing up at their house and they're like, please take my baby. I need to go in the other room. I'm so sorry. And that's okay. We understand that. We get it. We've seen it. We've done this. We have seen it. We absolutely know how you're feeling, because sometimes you just need a breath. You just need a minute to yourself. And we expect that. We want to hear you say that, because that is you acknowledging the fact that you need a little break.
It's true. Sometimes just saying it out loud, there's almost this sense of guilt where if you say those words, I'm tired or I need a break, especially for families that have fought so hard to have their kids, it can sometimes feel like they're stepping away from something that they wanted so much. How do you help people manage through that? Where do you think that guilt might come from?
I think some of it may come from our own internal childhood and how we were raised, all the things that we carry into adulthood, right? But a lot of it is societal, particularly in the age of the internet and social media and influencers and perfect lives online that aren't real. And so part of our job and what we want anyone that we place in a home to do is to compassionately say, hey, you're human. It's okay. I know you wanted this baby like crazy. You being tired now, those two things can coexist together. that you wanted this baby and you're excited about this baby. And right this second, you're exhausted and you just want to hand this baby to somebody else so you can close your eyes for 15 minutes. That's okay. And that's normal. And guess what? Even though you don't ever see it on the internet, it happens in almost every single household across the entire world. It is fine. It is normal. It is okay. Sometimes parents just need to be told they're not doing anything wrong. That feel is okay and it's normal, and that you can experience all of those things. You can love your baby and be like, oh my God, you're here. Take this baby away from me right now. But
It's true. It's so true. I mean, you need that, especially, and I'll just say, like, my family is not in the city where I live. They're dispersed. And I oftentimes think about this, and I know other friends who are in the same situation where their families are distributed. It takes a village and it takes a community. If you don't have that, it can be hard to have the weight of all of the responsibility and feel like you're doing it alone. Your point on just that positive reinforcement, that positive encouragement, and getting people off social media can really do wonders for your mental health.
yes.
And understanding two things can be true at the same time. You can have wanted and loved this baby, and it can be hard to have this newborn home with you. And you can be having a hard day where you're feeling sad and not yourself. Yet at the same time, you are so grateful to have this baby in your arms and in your home.
Do you feel like hiring help is cheating?
Absolutely not.
No.
I was a child care professional. Newborns were my business. That's what I did. I created the education that people who do this work take. I still had professional help in my home. So absolutely not. It is not cheating. We all need help to do this life. No matter what aspect of it, we need help to do life together. We were never, as human beings, meant to do life alone. And we were never meant to do life in a way where our families are dispersed all over. We are designed to be a community. And sometimes we need to hire that help in order to provide the resources that are not available to us for whatever reason, whether it's work that took us away or illness or a lack of family entirely, because not everybody has family at all. It is never cheating. And sometimes, frankly, it's better.
I say that question in jest because I hear a lot from friends and folks that I come across, and they're like, well, I don't know, is this going to be a workaround? Or, oh, that's very privileged. And in some aspects, it is. But I often also think about any skill that you've never done before or a subject that you don't know. You'll go take a class, or you might find an exercise program, or you may read a book to skill yourself in an area that you've never gone into before. It's important to say these words out loud and boldly that, no, it's not cheating if you are alone in a community sense, if your family isn't nearby, or if you're just finding it hard to build a chosen community. It's absolutely vital that you find skilled people who can show you the way. It's going to help you, it's going to help your kids, and it's going to help everyone around you.
It is okay to ask for help. 100%.
Yeah. I had a client once years ago that said to me, look, when I got a puppy and I didn't know what I was doing, I hired a dog trainer. Now I have twins coming and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to hire a baby trainer. And she's like, that sounds terrible to describe it that way, but that's exactly how I view it. And she was a professional. She was a doctor. Her husband was a doctor. And she was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why wouldn't I hire an expert?
So we talk a lot about community in every sense of that word, community with your chosen family, your nuclear family. But there's also a group of individuals who build their families individually, single parents by choice. What's that like for you coming into their home? And tell us, what is that like with their kids? How did they recognize your partnership with their parent?
I love working with any new parents, period. But I love working with single parents because, frankly, a lot of times they need the support in a different kind of way. Many times, if they've chosen to become a single parent, even if they have family, sometimes the reaction is not so good. Sometimes from friends, it's not so good. I've talked to somebody who's going to be a single dad fairly soon, and he said he had friends who told him they weren't going to help because he was being selfish by bringing this child into the world without having a partner. In a sense, I want to help them even more. because I want them to know that this is their family. And if this is the choice they've made, they deserve to have a great family experience just like anybody else does. Yet they experience it in a different way. It's a lot more responsibility. There is no one else to share the responsibility with. And so I find, at least my experience has been, that I go a little more out of my way to be more supportive. Until you asked that, I didn't really think about it, but I think I maybe have intentionally done that to support them even more. But I'm thrilled to see anybody who wants to be a parent become a parent. And I want to support that in any way that I can.
How about you, Maryann?
Absolutely have worked for and with many single parents. I think that they lean on you maybe a little bit more for those sit down conversations at 2:00 in the morning. They want to ask you a lot of questions. They don't always have someone else there to bounce ideas off of, and they're looking for all different answers. You get in a little deeper with these families. They look to you for advice in all different aspects. There's one particular family that I've worked for who was a single parent who ended up having twins. And this person waited until they were around my age or so. And that's when they felt that they were ready in their life. They didn't feel like that they were ready when they were young 20s or when it was more common to do it. They felt that they were ready when they were financially ready and when they had better time to give. They're doing fabulous. You know, they were ready, and it didn't matter to anyone else. It mattered to them.
That's a very important nuance. Financial readiness and physical readiness rarely intersect. If you are a single parent by choice and you're going through the process of building your family, I totally agree. You have to feel ready in both senses. And oftentimes, as you both pointed out, that isn't a singular event. Sometimes that happens in stages. If we think about those stages of getting ready and getting prepared, you've seen the gamut. What would you say to anybody to get lined up? What are the things that they should have in place ahead of time? What are the things that you'd want them to get more prepared for before the baby arrives?
My phrase is always helping manage expectations. If you understand or have spoken to your pediatrician in advance, or a sleep professional in advance, or a newborn care specialist in advance, then hopefully you start to understand that in those first 2 weeks, the newborn's tummy is so tiny that they're going to wake you up every hour and a half to 2 hours to feed. And then gradually it gets bigger, they get bigger, the sleep stretches get farther apart, and the amounts that they eat increase. And so managing expectations from the very start for families who are expecting, understanding what is to come in those first couple of weeks, how that changes in the following 6 weeks, how that then changes again and multiple other times throughout that first year, so that they can prepare for, okay, we're going to need more support at the beginning, or lean on more people at the beginning because this is where things are going to be the most intense. And then by the time baby gets to this age, we're able to understand what might be different, and letting them know also that they're never alone in any of it. And finding that, like you mentioned before, creating those communities can be hard, but reaching out and finding other parents who are going through similar stages can be crucial to the emotional support of having that newborn at home for any family.
Not only do I agree 100% with Brigit about managing expectations, because as I mentioned earlier, we live in the world of social media. Sometimes people have very unrealistic expectations. My baby's 2 days old and he's sleeping through the night. Not healthy for your baby. And that's a whole different story to go into. But I find that parents don't know what they don't know. And so what I want them to have is not to have just talked to those people, but to actually have their resources lined up that are legitimate resources. That's not a Facebook parent group. That's not the lady next to you at the lactation class if you're a mom who's going to be nursing a baby or whatever. It is actual legitimately properly educated resources, because most people mean well and they want to help, but they might be sharing incorrect information, or they may be sharing with you the name of the care provider that they use and they don't realize they got awful care, and that person isn't really properly qualified to do the work that they're doing. Maybe on a grander scale, they referred you to their pediatrician, and maybe you as a parent have decided you don't want to vaccinate, or you want a delayed schedule, and you need the preferred resource to support whatever your family values. I like to see parents really do their research or to ask us. We have vetted resources that we share with families on all sides of the spectrum. Our job is not to tell you how to be a family or be a parent or what your morals or values should be. Our job is to provide you with a variety of resources that are all properly vetted for safety and accuracy, but that cover a broad spectrum of things so that you can find the resources that support you as a family right where you're at, rather than just relying on, oh, my girlfriend said that this was somebody great, or, this dad told my husband.
Word of mouth is the biggest and best medium, but it's a double-edged sword. I want to unpack that a little bit more because especially with Facebook groups and all sorts of social media channels, you really get almost a one-sided or heavily monetized lens through which you are receiving that content. How do you disambiguate that? How do you take apart that information? How do you go about vetting?
As a company, when we are going to share our resource list, we have met these organizations or these resources, or we've talked to this pediatrician's office, or we've met and interviewed. So for example, a lactation consultant that we love with our company that we refer out a lot. We've worked with her. We know her personally. We've had lots of conversations to ensure that the information that she's disseminating is actually factually based. But sometimes, even when somebody's factually based, their viewpoint is still different than what is right for that family. And we experienced that recently where we referred her out on a job and she said it wasn't that the previous lactation consultant that they talked to gave wrong information. She just did it in a way that wasn't right for her family. So it isn't just making sure that they know what they're talking about. It's also making sure that we have met them, talked to them, spent time with them so that when you come to us and say, hey, I need this kind of resource, we're sending you somebody that's supporting of your family and your family the way that it's put together. We're saying, here's a variety of people. You should talk to all of them. We know they all have the right credentials. We know they're all kind people. We know they're professionally respected, but you need to talk to all four of them to find the one that's the right fit for your family.
So what questions would you encourage parents to ask? Like, here are the top 3 questions you should ask of any provider. What would that be?
I think that finding out their experience, first of all, and their training is going to be an important piece of what you want to know about the practitioners you're going to work with. How long have you been doing this? Where did you train? And then depending on what field it is you're looking for, do they have a reference you can speak to, or do they have reviews you can confirm? I think are also really important questions to be asking them, and checking in on their style. What is their style? What's their demeanor? How do they work specifically with the families to make sure that you feel supported in what it is that you're looking for and the care that you're looking for?
When you talk about credentials, elaborate on that a little bit more. What are credentialed institutions that you look at?
I'll give an example, at least in the newborn care specialist world, because that's my wheelhouse. There are multiple training organizations out there. Some of them say that they're accredited. Some of them don't say that they're accredited. But unfortunately, you need to understand what's behind that accreditation and what is it really? Or do they self-certify? Because if I'm teaching people that the moon is purple and you took my class and I certified you, you're now telling other people that the moon is purple, and yet science tells us a very different story. So part of understanding is what kind of accreditation do they actually have? What is their authority to speak to this? Especially now in the age of AI, we're seeing in all arenas around babies and newborns and frankly, everything, expert programs popping up everywhere that the person who created them only knew how to do one thing, and that was to ask the right prompt. They didn't actually know how to do what they're trying to teach you how to do. And so, okay, well, you say you're accredited. Where did your accreditation come from? And I'll toot our own horn for just a moment. But as an education company, our accreditation comes from Cash International, which is the home of the British nanny. There is no legitimate accreditation within the United States. So from the education side of our company, when we went after accreditation, we went after the gold standard, which was the organization that since 1945 has been putting their stamp of approval on people who are working with infants and newborns and young children and actually evaluating as a completely independent third party what is being taught. Anytime you're talking to somebody, if you're talking to somebody who says they're a lactation consultant, for example, You want to get deeper. Are they actually just a certified lactation consultant, or are they what we would call an IBCLC, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant? Because those are two wildly different things. One can be earned pretty quick. The other one takes hours and hours of training, college level classes and supervised work, etc., and an independent third party organization supervising the exam and their actual certification process. And look, parents don't know what they don't know. It's not because they're bad parents. It's not because their friends wanted to give them bad advice. They just don't know what they don't know. So, okay, what kind of accreditation do you have? Where did it come from? Who's behind it all? Is it an actual legitimate thing? Or did they just write a check?
You want to know that the expert you're speaking to or hiring is recognized as an expert by other experts.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we do is everybody who applies with our company actually has to go through an internal assessment exam. So no matter where they're trained, we know that they at least understand the very minimum standards about safe bottle preparation, how to safely test water for the right temperature when you're bathing a baby, how to swaddle a baby safely, and when to stop swaddling. So there's a lot of questions that we ask in order to ensure any person that we refer out has at least a baseline understanding of safety and developmentally appropriate things.
We're coming down to the tail end here, and I want to ask two last questions. After all these years and all the homes that you've been in, what do you now believe about becoming a parent today that you didn't believe when you first started?
There's a lot more gray area than I thought there was 25 or 30 years ago coming into this. When I first came into this industry, I was very black and white about everything that I did. There's a lot more gray than I thought there was, but gray is a wonderful color. And I love that there's so much more variation. There's far less that is rigid and black and white than I used to think of when I first started in this industry. And I have a lot more empathy, a lot of respect for families in every form that they come in. And I'm endlessly fascinated by how families are created.
I have cared for hundreds of babies, hundreds of children over the last 20 years. And I can tell you that it's not a one size fits all. When you walk into someone's home, you don't always use the same way of doing things you just did in the last house, because it might not just work that way. Their baby's going to be different than the last baby. And that parent is different than the last parent. So using years of experience, trying to know that this is their baby and I am not going to be here in the long run, but what is going to work best for them, and just trying to go with them through their journey and find the best fit for them is kind of what my goal is. And when I'm doing a placement, trying to find the right fit for them within that. When we try to pick out somebody within their household, it's really important for me to know, how does this family work? What is their personality style? Because there are a lot of personalities out there and we like to get it right the first time around.
At the end of the day, we're there to help support you with your choices. This is your baby. This is your family. And yes, we have all this experience behind us and we can bring you the knowledge. We can bring you the suggestions, but at the end of the day, we've learned through working with so many different newborns and so many different family dynamics. We are that support system through this transition, and we want to guide you, but also we want you to be able to make those choices and support those choices, whatever they are.
What's the one thing you wish every parent knew before the baby came home that they almost never do?
I would just love to remind parents who are expecting a newborn that you are not alone and you can do this and you will do this.
You will make mistakes. Your baby will forgive you long before you will, but you need to learn to forgive yourself too, because part of your baby becoming who they are is them learning to deal with the fact that everybody in this world is imperfect and everybody's going to make mistakes. Parents have so much pressure on them to get this all right so that we don't screw up our kids, kind of thing. And particularly in today's world, there seems to be a huge emphasis on that. The reality is you are going to make mistakes. Your baby will forgive you. And those mistakes are actually important because they're part of how we all grow and learn. And so to maybe reframe that a little bit, that it is a part of parenthood, and it is actually an important part of parenthood.
I love that. I think that's very, very true.
I also just want to remind parents that their baby is going to cry. Their baby's going to cry a lot. Their baby's going to cry. And I don't think sometimes parents remember that, oh my gosh, why is my baby crying? I'm just trying to change them. Babies hate being changed, and they cry when they're hungry and when they're tired. It's the way that they communicate. It's not a bad thing. It's nice to learn the different cries so they can learn how to help their baby. I love when a family, a parent, can learn the different cries, because finally they're like, I know why. I know what this cry is. I know this cry means they're hungry, because it's a different cry. I think families forget that that's their only way of communicating. They don't come in talking.
Some of my friends say, learn how to be affectionate with your kids. And I say, learn how to be confectionate with your kids. Because when I learned that my kids speak in chocolate, a Kit Kat bar went miles. Communication. Thank you all for joining. This was such a great conversation, and I appreciate your perspective. It is so vital that we support one another through this community of becoming parents, being parents, and just being ourselves. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We're the Newborn Care Solutions Agency. It's .ncsa.com. We're here to help, and we're here to make a difference for families. That is really the heart of why we do what we do, is to make a difference for families.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Family Fronds. If today's conversation left you with questions, that's a good thing. The more informed you are before a journey begins, the better positioned you'll be when important decisions need to be made. If you're interested in learning more, visit us at pineapplefamily.org. We'll see you next time.